Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us here at Louisa Settle Avenue. My name is Dennis LaCarrie. I'm Senior Assistant to the County Manager, and I have oversight for the Brooklyn Village Redevelopment Project. Joining me tonight are Monty Ritchie, President of the Conformity Corporation, Don Peebles, the Chairman, CEO of Peebles Corporation, Greg Kola, Director of Investments from Peebles Corporation, and Jeffrey Simon from Stantec. This is the last in the first round of public meetings that we've held in order to solicit feedback and input from the public related to this project. We will be taking the feedback that we've heard from all of the meetings prior to this one and sharing out what we believe we heard with the community tomorrow night at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Government Center in room 267 at 6 p.m. for a town hall meeting. At 5:30, just prior to that, we will be screening in full a documentary called A Colored School. Anybody who was at the town hall meeting kickoff saw an excerpted version of that, but the filmmaker and producers have graciously allowed us to screen the movie in full just prior so that folks can get an idea of what Brooklyn was prior to the urban renewal that brought us to the state of affairs that you find in Second Ward today. So we hope that you will join us for the screening as well as for the town hall meeting. Make sure that we're reporting back accurately what you say to us. So tonight we will be soliciting your feedback, your input, questions as well on every facet of the project. And just like every other meeting that we've held to date, this one is being videotaped. So when you do have a question or a comment, please wait for the microphone to make its way to you so that it can be recorded and heard by anybody who wishes to review the video later. You may feel free to at any time, either on YouTube, on the Mecklenburg County website, or on the Brooklyn Village website, view any or all of the videos from the prior meetings. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ritchie.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening. You hear me okay? Thank you all for being with us tonight. Dennis mentioned that this is the last of a number of outreach meetings that we've done, so I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. Can I get a show of hands on anyone who has not been with us before? If you've not been to any one of our public meetings, would you mind raising your hand to let us know that? Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move through a set of slides here fairly quickly, but when we're complete, if you find that we've moved through something too fast, please just let me know and we'll go back and look at that again. What we want to do, if we can, is get to Q&A as quickly as possible and leave as much time for questions and answers this evening as we possibly can. But for those of you who have not been with us before, let me quickly introduce you to the project and to our team. Dennis mentioned my name is Monty Ritchie. I'm president of the Conformity Corporation, a local development company that's been in business in Charlotte since 1993. We specialize in high-density infill and mixed-use complex projects that tend to be entitlement intensive and preservation, which has really helped us a lot where our infill is concerned. What we've learned from doing preservation work has informed our infill work in a lot of ways. We are partnered with Peebles Corporation, which is a national firm that's done projects in major cities up and down the eastern seaboard, as well as some West Coast cities, San Francisco, Las Vegas, and others. They are a multi-billion-dollar firm with projects in Miami, DC, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, and other locations. Peebles Corporation which is a design and engineering firm, Stantec, thank you. Stantec introduced Peebles in conformity. This is round 4, so that's my first stub toe today. So Stantec actually introduced us to one another. And I want to thank Jeffrey Simon and Craig Lewis, who helped make that happen. They're here from Stantec today. And Jeffrey will be on the dais here with us in a little bit. And we have a number of local firms that have been a big part of our effort: Cole Geneston Stone, Perkins and Will, Urbane, Jennifer Stanton is a retail consultant, and on and on. So we think we've really put together a good team of local talent as well as national perspective on what it is that we need to achieve here with this this important project. Also want to quickly acknowledge Gregory Cola, who's the Director of Investment from Peebles Corporation. So that whole group's kind of sitting in the shadows over there, and we'll all be up here answering your questions in just a little bit. A couple of Peebles projects here reflective of the type of work that they have done and are capable of, and some conformity projects here locally. Quick overview on Stantec, 22,000 people, global firm. They do have an office in Charlotte in the Airsley community off of South Tryon. So they will be servicing the Brooklyn Village project from the Airsley office. So when we first approached the Brooklyn project, one of the things that reveals itself immediately is the difficulty with the history. In Brooklyn, 227 acres of urban renewal, over 1,000 homes, over 100 businesses, 13 operating African-American churches and congregations, all raised. There are 4 buildings that remain on the heels of urban renewal in all of Brooklyn. You would have to be quite knowledgeable about what happened there to spot those buildings. There's just no evidence whatsoever that this place ever existed. So as we've talked to folks who were impacted by this particular piece of urban renewal, which of course is a national phenomenon, and in Charlotte alone it affected far more than Brooklyn, Greenville, Washington Heights, and others, and 7 or 8 communities in Charlotte alone, and millions of folks nationwide. You know, how do you honor the that history, and that's a tricky thing. One of the questions that I asked very early on of one of our consultants was, how do we do justice here? And the question was not a rhetorical one. I said, literally, I have no idea how you do justice here. It seems to me to be an impossibility. And we concluded that it was an impossibility, but his suggestion was that we needed to get the African American community involved in decision making, and the African American community needed to make money. So some of the things that we've done as part of our submittal, and I think ultimately led to our success, include the fact we have the largest park of all of the parkland that was submitted. The proposals that were submitted, our parkland is the largest. We have the most affordable housing in terms of unit count, but perhaps most importantly, the thing that differentiates us most completely from the other competitors is that we've made a 35% commitment to minority small business and women-owned enterprises, which in the case of this particular project amounts to north of $225 million going out to minority women and small business enterprises today. That number is likely to go up as the project grows. This is the way we have what you're going to see today. The costs amount to about $675 million, so a third of that is $225. So we're particularly proud of that. We've had some sessions that are dedicated to MWSBE, and we'll go on into that in just a bit, as well as some other things that we've done to try and do our very best to recognize what came before, and because there's so little evidence of that whenever you just walk around the site today. Sycamore was a very vital place, very active place, lots of energy, and we've heard that from folks routinely. And we need to figure out how to recreate that and then connect it to Uptown and also connect it to the Midtown. So, we're answering to any number of demands here. It's not a simple thing to work through this matrix of challenges and try and get every piece of it right. But one of the things that's been particularly instructive for me, you see this vitality here, in talking with folks who were impacted by urban renewal, we've not once heard that anybody expects us to go back and rebuild Brooklyn. We've not even heard anything that's remotely similar to that. What we have heard is that folks are concerned, I think, first and foremost, about the notion that a community of people who were displaced by these events will soon be forever forgotten. The Second Ward High School National Alumni Foundation has done their very best to ensure that that does not happen. This is a group of folks who graduated from the Second Ward High School. And interestingly, they drew actually from all over Mecklenburg County, because if you were African American and you wanted to go to high school, whether you lived in Brooklyn or anywhere else, you were going to go to the Second Ward High School because it was the only option. First and only high school in Brooklyn for black folks for about 14 years until West Charlotte was built later on. In fact, that was a rivalry for the longest time until the school was raised in '69. So we're going to try and make sure that we're speaking to the legacy of these people. They do not seem to be terribly focused on their buildings. They're focused on what they were as a group of people, as a neighborhood of people. This is a quick programmatic view of what it is that we're doing, about 2.3 million square feet. I'll spare you the line item by line item, but you can see we have a number of different product types here. Talk a little bit about the design. We're standing, in this particular slide, we're standing on McDowell with our back to McDowell, looking up a newly created 2nd Street that runs right down the middle of an 11-acre parcel. There are 2 parcels. We're going to look at these in just a minute. 2 parcels, one of them is 11 acres and change, and the other one's about 5. This is the larger of the 2, near the Mecklenburg Aquatic Center. And this site's bounded by Martin Luther King, McDowell III, and what would have been Alexander, the backside of the Baptist Church. So we're looking towards uptown now, and you have retail here, some office above. This is a condo tower that we see here, and beyond that, out of sight, is the park, and then you have an office building here, and then there's some other housing and retail happening off in the distance. This is an even hotel, just kind of peeking into frame up top here. Moving to the other end of the street, so we're on 2nd again, but now we're looking back out towards McDowell. So now we can see the park here on our left. Here's the condo tower again. The even hotel is now on our right, just kind of right here at the end of this walkway, and looking out towards McDowell. This Martin Luther King, which had been called 2nd Street prior to being renamed, was nowhere near the original 2nd Street road lie. This is the actual 2nd Street road lie that runs right up the middle of this block that we're going to look at more completely here in just a minute. This is the Stonewall parcel, Stonewall, McDowell, and Alexander. So you see we have a tower here. This is office. We're looking out towards Metropolitan Midtown now and the hospital. We have some housing with some retail on the bottom floor. This is a Staybridge Hotel. I believe they have their own restaurant brand, if I recall correctly, that comes with their package. And then this is Alexander here that comes down in dead ends today. The Actors Theater, for those of you who are familiar with this area, kind of sits right here at Alexander and Stonewall, and is actually about to become an apartment building prepared by another developer, Prophet Dixon. So we can see some of that activity here. Here's our, now we're, flip the lens again. We're looking towards uptown, our office buildings in the foreground, some housing and retail. Here we have the hotel. This is the Prophet Dixon apartment building, Northwood Raven, and then you proceed on up Stonewall, and you have Crescent's, Whole Foods, Venture, Portman's building a new office building. Crescent actually has 2 parcels up there, and then you get to the old Charlotte Observer site that Lincoln Harris is redeveloping in partnership with Goldman Sachs. Everything from the football stadium all the way down to the old Realtors building, which is at Greenwood Cliff off of Stonewall, becomes Kenilworth. Everything on the south side of that corridor is under development. Every single parcel, close to $4 billion worth of development along that corridor. So what that's meant is groups like Charlotte Center City Partners and others are really focused on trying to figure out how to make Stonewall a better place to be, right? It's not a terribly great place today to walk and ride your bike. In fact, it's probably the opposite of a great place to walk and ride a bike. So a number of groups will be working on making this as great as it can be, and that's certainly work that needs to be done. the swimming pool is here, and that wall's a blank wall, and you have the convention center as a blank wall. It's kind of a difficult space that needs some attention. This is just a plan view of the same area, the hotel, some housing, large format retail in the green on the bottom, and then you have, think grocery store, for instance, and then you have the office building up above. This is Brooklyn Village North. So when we talk about Brooklyn Village, we're talking about both parcels. We have elected in our submittal to refer to them as Brooklyn Village North and South to help folks orient where they are. I mentioned earlier, 2nd Street running up off of McDowell is right here. This is the parcel that is 11 acres and change, and this parcel is about 5. We have a wide variety of uses here: hotel, office, retail, restaurants, cultural. The park is on this site. A lot of things happening here, but the item that I really want to begin to bring your attention to with this slide is this Myers Passage component here that connects Brooklyn Village North and Brooklyn Village South. Myers Street also is an original road. This is a 1929 Sanborn map that we have laid in an approximation of our land on top of that map to sort of show you where Brooklyn Village North and Brooklyn Village South are. Myers Street used to proceed all the way through the 2nd Ward to the 1st Ward. It actually went down over an embankment that today is 277 and hit some other streets that are today Baxter and led all the way down to Pearl Street Park. Of course, those connections have all been busted up. And what we found with Myers is that it still presented itself when you're out walking the land. You can see it if you know where to look. It's still there. The separation between the swimming pool and the 2nd Ward High School gymnasium. There's a low-lying courts building on 3rd Street where there is a breezeway through that building that is Myers Street. It's the exact lie of the old Myers Street right-of-way. So when we started looking at that, we realized there was a real opportunity to connect Brooklyn Village North and South, not only to each other, but also to 1st Ward, because of course 1st and 2nd Ward are at one time connected as well. So when you move through the Civil Courts building and on up past Trade and so on, you got to kind of wend your way around the government buildings, and then there's Myers Street again, about 2 blocks of it, picks up near the post office and continues on up into the 1st Ward. So a lot of folks excited about that, bike and pedestrian connectivity folks and planners in general. It's just a really strong organizing element that helps bring these 2 parcels together. Here you see it more schematically. Coming down from the government center through the breezeway and the courts building, right along the edge of the park. This is all retail and office here, all activated through a courtyard and a housing development, past the gym, past the swimming pool, and over to Brooklyn Village South. So we presented recently to the Parks and Recreation Commission, and thank Elaine Powell, the chair, for being here with us tonight. And one of the things that we brought up during that meeting, and we brought up in other meetings, it's not hard to envision a situation where, I'll call it an opportunity, where someone might be at the swimming pool for a meet, staying at the Staybridge. They've forgotten something. They go to a retailer here, maybe a 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 square foot retailer like a Nike, something like that, as opposed to an inline retailer. And they get what they've forgotten in terms of athletic gear, back to the pool. They want to get some lunch. They walk over here. There's a dozen different restaurants to choose from. We have about 35,000 feet dedicated to food right now. So they have something to eat. Come back to hit the grocery store for some potato chips or whatever that they're going to eat in the hotel room later that night. That's a extended stay format. Go to the swimming pool and come back. There's a kitchenette in the hotel and use their groceries that they purchase on site. So all these things can happen within walking distance from the pool, for example, and within walking distance of each other if you happen to be using or staying at one of the 2 different sites, north or south. Swimming pool. Here's the retailing opportunities we've talked about, food, hotels over here. It's just another rendering of how Myers Passage connects those different areas. Myers Street Elementary School was almost exactly where the swimming pool is today. Here's the gymnasium. Second Ward High School would have sat right there. Another view of Myers Passage. This is a view looking through the park. You can see Brooklyn Village North in the foreground, and then looking past the swimming pool and the old school site, you can see our office building and some of the housing happening in the background there. The park is activated on 3 sides with restaurants, retail, office, lots of people moving in and out of very porous buildings at the ground level, lots of doors, lots of activity, patio seating, that type of thing, all of which will inform the energy around this park. The green uptown is a good example of this. If you've been to the green near the Ratcliffe that's off of College Street, it's lined by retail restaurants in the loggia. They're kind of tucked up underneath the condominium balconies. And the other thing I like about that park is it has some great examples of programming, intermittent programming. At one point, Nikki St. Phail, who does large-scale architecture, had an installation there that was sponsored by the Modern Museum right across the street. So Nikki was there for a little while. Shakespeare in the Park occurs there from time to time. So we've been in communication with, so far, and principally, with the Harvey B. Gantt Center, and of course with the folks who went to school and lived here, talking about how do we use this park as a canvas to tell the story of Brooklyn and to reinvent that narrative from time to time. And that could go any number of different directions. It doesn't always need to be about Brooklyn. It might feature African American artists. There are any number of directions that you can go with that. The Gantt Center has expressed a lot of interest in helping us out with that thinking. So here we're looking at a plan of Brooklyn Village North, and I just want to point out this little section that you see here we refer to as a festival street. And this is a recent addition that popped up, something that we've added to our thinking. Second Street really lends itself neatly to being closed off from time to time. I'm sure everybody here has been to a small town or a big city or a European city where you come upon what is clearly a street most of the time. But today, in this moment, it is a pop-up retail venue, or it's a giant farmer's market, or the street's just closed and it becomes a pedestrian mall, and there's activity all over the street. Second Street lends itself beautifully to that type of an arrangement, with a public park on one side and inline retail around it on most of the other edges. So the notion that you could generate a lot of activity here and just have the park sort of bleed over into these spaces and into the shops around it is not a far-fetched idea. So we're pretty excited about that. And then you can see here again where we pick up and run on across to Brooklyn Village South, going past the gym and the swim mac by way of Myers Passage. This slide, we see some stained glass and some concrete that's been routed out here to reflect the orientation of old buildings and so on. The map that we looked at a few slides back, the old Sanborn map that had the yellow blocks on it, those are 1929 fire maps, and great tool for folks who do historical research. You can go back and see what was it that the Sanborn Fire Insurance Company felt like they needed to provide fire insurance on in 1929, and all the buildings are there. So this is a reflection of, the Sanborn maps are a great reflection of what you would have found in 1929, and here we've translated some of that to the horizontal plane by describing some of that into a concrete installation. The stained glass pays homage to the churches that were lost. But one thing that we've said over and over, and say it again today, is that these are just ideas. The park will be designed uniquely as part of a separate process. And some folks have responded very favorably to these ideas. I don't think anybody's ever had a viscerally negative response to these ideas. But that's all they are. These are not our decisions to make. There are folks who I think are, who we know are much closer to the history of Brooklyn than what I or anyone on my team is. So we'll continue to communicate with those folks to come up with ideas about how the park is programmed. These are some thoughts we had around how you might program the park. We have been doing this for a while in a variety of formats since August. We started with a kickoff meeting shortly after explaining to the county commission how we intended to execute on our outreach plan. And we have talked about the history and cultural programming in Brooklyn, design issues in the development, how we intend to get to our 35% MWSBE participation target, which is just an enormous goal and one that we're very committed to. In fact, Dennis brought up earlier, and I'd lost sight of this, at the final stages of this competition, there were 2 other teams left, and the other 2 teams were silent entirely on minority participation, which we were not only not silent on it, but 35 is about as lofty a goal as you're ever going to see. We also discussed affordable housing and public space, parks, economic opportunity, and our approach to retail. So we've been doing that at a variety of locations around Mecklenburg County, doing it in the evening and in the morning, doing everything that we can to mix up how it is that we get across from people, doing everything that we can to ensure that we're across from as many folks as we possibly can be. These town hall sessions that we did today are a function of looking back at how well we did with that and identifying some groups that we still hadn't seen or heard from. And then you've received either an email or a direct mail, or maybe you heard about it through a website, I don't know, but it was our last push to try and get some more folks to come out and chat with us a little bit. So thank you for being here for that. So this is the last of the general information sessions that we did today. We'll be with County Commission, or excuse me, we'll be in front of the community again with a town hall meeting tomorrow night, where we will report out the same information that we hope to report out to County Commission within a few weeks thereafter. So tomorrow night we sort of test our thinking. We will get in front of hopefully a large crowd and chat a little bit about all the work we've done so far. And rather than running through slides where we talk about our development and about our team, we'll be talking about what it is that everybody's been saying to us. This is what we think we heard. Folks will have the opportunity to say, well, okay, or you're a little off on, a little off on that. We're actually saying this. Also welcome new ideas at that time. And then within the next, say, 2 to 3 weeks, I suspect we'll be presenting similar information to County Commission. So we're going to take, share our contact information there if you need it. And we're going to sit down at this table here and take questions from y'all and welcome those. Comments also. Doesn't have to be a question, just be an observation. So please let us know your thoughts. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm an almost native Charlottean, but I do go back to the first grade at Dilworth Elementary School, which is less than a mile away from this very creative project that you have on the table here. And I finished school at Central High School, which is to the north, but still less than a mile away from this. So I view what you're doing here with great excitement, and I commend you especially for your respect for and your commitment to preserving the history of this neighborhood. So I congratulate you on that. Before I knew anything about this project, my good friend Jerry Clark here, who is a native of Charlotte and been in the city all his life, have been working on a project to add to the current aquatic center site. It's Jerry's idea going back at least 10 years. He's a master swimmer, swims all over the country. And I know he doesn't look it, but he's over 50 years old. Jerry has been dedicated to this, a project that would add a new pool to the site on McDowell, right next to the current aquatic center, which happily the county has just spent $8.5 million renovating to make it superior facility than what it was before this. Jerry's idea was to add this swimming pool, a new pool on the same site, which would allow us to attract international events to Charlotte, international swimming events. And the idea was that we would fiber the pool so that we could televise events with major sports entities here in Charlotte, ESPN, Raycon Sports, among others, that we could promote our city around the world. The networks are looking for high quality sports events to televise, and we think this would be a great event, several of these events. It would add to the economic viability of the community. It would fill up hotel rooms, including the new ones that are going up in Brooklyn Village and nearby. It would fill up our restaurants. I mean, that we would have it would have a tremendous impact on the hotel and entertainment industry in Charlotte. That means more jobs for everybody going forward. As you probably know, Charlotte now houses home to SwimMac, which is coached by David Marsh, who coached the women's Olympic team in this year's Olympics down in Rio de Janeiro, with great success, I might add. And we have dozens of national quality swimmers now coming to Charlotte, growing up in Charlotte, and add to the swimming community. So we think this would be a fantastic thing. We think this pool would help to crystallize part of the development that you all are talking about and be a complement to it. There are other aspects of it that tie into the community aspects, and that is one of the major elements that we would insist on in this program and pooling it. It would be to learn how to swim programs for children of all ages, but probably initially focus on third graders, every third grader in Charlotte-Mecklenburg learning how to swim. We would not limit it to children because there are a lot of adults that know how to swim. And one of the major causes of death among young Afro-Americans is drowning, believe it or not. So a major emphasis from day one for us has been to have a program to teach people the lifelong skill of swimming. So we think it would help to the overall health point of view of our community. The other aspect, which I mentioned earlier, that Monty, that we very much would support, is your interest and commitment to preserving the history of the Second Ward neighborhood. As I say, 4 of my 5 children graduated from West Charlotte, so I'm well aware of that old rivalry that existed out there. But certainly, as I walk from my home on Euclid Avenue in Dilworth, down McDowell, down Elizabeth to Central High School, I was well aware of the vitality of the Afro-American community back in those days. So the fact that you want to preserve that is one of the things that have been high on our list of essentials in any development of a pool and the rest of the area there. We very much want to see the Second Ward gym preserved. We thought initially, and no conversations with others, that could be kind of a museum with identifying the leaders in the Second Ward community down through the years. It could also be a practical center for use at the pool when we have major meets there at both of the pools. So our congratulations to you on your bold and creative thinking. We'd love very much to be a part of it, and thank you for allowing this opportunity to speak about our proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Babb.
This mystery man's name is Jim Babb. He runs Heckle Television Enterprise here in Charlotte. And you forgot to introduce yourself. I could talk for 30 minutes about his things he's done for this city. My name is Jerry Clark, and I am over 50 years old. Seemed like it was last week I was 50, but time goes by. Yeah, we are interested in bringing in big meets. I've raced in a number of Masters National Championship meets and a smaller number of World Masters World meets. And a big Masters meet, U.S. Masters Swimming, will bring anywhere from 1,800 to 2,200 people to a town for 5 nights, usually 5, sometimes 6. And age group meets, which I really don't know a whole lot about, will, I think Southern California is the bed of most age group big meets, Irvine, California particularly. And they usually run 2,200, 2,300 people, children of different ages, into what's called junior nationals and senior nationals, and they have lots and lots of meets. Sectional meets, and then regional meets, and all the higher, the faster kids get to advance to the bigger meets. So there's other things to aquatics that I'd like to speak to just briefly. Is not just swimming, and it's not just racing. First, the children that swim, and we have 3 kids and we have 8 grandkids, all of them have been swimming. They're great time managers, and that carries over into the classroom at schools. The average grade levels and skill levels for children is higher for swimmers because they have to get out of school, go train. Our grandson gets out of the water at 9:15 p.m., 30 minutes away from our house. I think he starts around 7, and one group's getting out, another group's coming in. I do want to touch on one thing that's very conjectural, and it's just a possibility, but it's growing. I had some conversation about it just today, is to take, Jim mentioned, take 3rd graders. The town of Richmond, Virginia, has 13,000 2nd graders, and they run them through, learn to swim during the school year. They rent pools, they have volunteers like me to teach kids, and it's been very successful. And I've had preliminary talks with Ann Clark about this, and she's excited to learn about more. The man in Richmond is going to come to Charlotte and explain how they do that. We have multiple questions, but wouldn't it be wonderful, just wonderful, if we could take all the 2nd graders in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system, which there are 10,000 of them, and teach all of them how to swim. It would be the PT hour in their classrooms. And the statistics of drowning are horrible. And with the learning to swim, there's this buildup of self-esteem, self-confidence, time management. So we're trying to get that started. I'd hate to be going public with it, but this man is coming, and he wants to help us do in Charlotte what he's done in Richmond. So we're all ears and energetic, and hope that we can get a 2nd pool that would host these kinds of meets, bring people to town, and have enough room to run people through the pools on the off hours of swim pools. They're busy early morning, lunchtime, and from 3:15 till 9 o'clock. But there are gaps in there where there's nobody in the pool. So it would help that very much. Thank you, Almighty, for coming, gentlemen. This is wonderful. I think I played in a basketball game in junior high in the gym over here. I can't remember for sure, but I think we did. And it was a 7th grader. Again, thanks a lot. Appreciate the time. Whoever else wants to speak. Thank you.
Questions?
I just Good evening, I'm Brian Gribble. And first off, I wanted to congratulate you guys, and what a heck of a team and partnership, and such an exciting project. Been following along. One thing I just wanted to, and I never have been quite sure when the appropriate time or the appropriate person to ask such a question that I've been curious about was, as Marshall Park, also I wanted to commend you on your community involvement and feedback from the community. That just really says a lot. But as Marshall Park gives way towards development, which I'm definitely in favor of, was just curious if there has been any discussion on any type of way or form to continue to honor the Marshall name. I was talking to Craig before the meeting and explaining to him that Jim Marshall was my great-grandfather, and I say that not only because of that personal relationship, but I don't think a lot of us know what he did for this city and how much he put and was involved with the city. He was a city manager back in an engineer back in the 30s, mid-30s and 40s. He designed the master street plan for Charlotte. Worked with Mayor Ben Douglas on the Charlotte Douglas Airport. He, of course, designed Independence Boulevard, Independence Park, Memorial Stadium, Freedom Park. He designed and implemented the expansion of the water and sewer system to allow for such growth, and really paved the way. And really, if you ever get a chance to research who he was and what he devoted to this city. But I like I say, it's in looking at the green space in the park, I would certainly in no way want to take away from paying homage to the theme and the Brooklyn Village. But and again, wasn't sure when it was appropriate or who to address that question to. But I was just whether that's a Parks and Rec or who would make that decision. But I just was just curious if it had been discussed. Thank you very much again. Thanks for.
And I'll field that, Brian, and thanks for being here, and absolutely do know who your great-grandfather was and the things that he did and meant here. So we do totally recognize that. And there have been conversations, certainly primarily focused on how to try and pay homage and reflect the spirit and the history, but there's been a lot of work done by these gentlemen along the lines of even identifying trees that existed prior to urban renewal and figuring how to preserve those as the redevelopment moves forward. Conversations around how to preserve the statuary that's in the park, like Dr. Martin Luther King's statue. Where does that go temporarily? Where does that come back to when the park is redeveloped? And obviously figuring out a way to honor what was there in Marshall Park while it existed. And so that will be something that will be done as part of that park design process that Mr. Ritchie referenced earlier. We'll have input from the Park and Rec Commission, and ultimately the Board of County Commissioners will determine what best reflects what was and what will be in that park relative to names and where things go and how things are laid out. Ultimately, it will come down to a vote of the county commission, but we appreciate you being involved and engaged right now, and please stay engaged throughout.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I think there's a question here.
Yes, my name is Vivian Mitchell, and I'm not from Charlotte, but I've been here almost close to 30 years.
So you are from Charlotte.
Born here, so I can't say I'm from Charlotte. My question is, how will you justify what's happened? Original residents that lived in Brooklyn Village, how can you justify what's happened to those residents? How can you move forward so that they could reclaim their previous residency in Brooklyn? And also regarding the churches, there was 13 churches there prior to urban renewal. Plan for maybe having one church in place? I mean, is there any spiritual plans for Brooklyn Village?
Well, look, I think, look, there's nothing that can be done to justify destroying, oh, sorry. Figured my voice was deep enough to carry, but, there, button up.
Yes, slide
There
there you
we
go.
go. Okay, how's that? All right. There's nothing that can be done to justify destroying a entire community and displacing thousands of people, destroying hundreds of small businesses. So there's nothing that can be done about that. In fact, that exercise took place, or began to take place, the year I was born in 1960, and went on through 1967. So that was a very long time ago. It was a tragedy when it took place. And so we're not going to make an effort to validate or justify that, but actually to look at trying to live by the spirit of what was in that community and what was in, you know, other black communities around North Carolina, around the South, and around the country, which was a quest for equality, a quest of equal access to education, equal access to economic opportunity, equal access to public accommodations and the like. And so this project will live up to that spirit of providing access to economic opportunity. My company is going to fund and help start a entrepreneurial academy to educate young urban kids, primarily minority kids, about the benefits and great opportunity that comes through entrepreneurship. And we are going to, by symbol, and I mean this by symbol, incorporate the history, some of the historical elements of the Brooklyn neighborhood, including how we name streets and the like. But, you know, we are going to let the way in which we develop this project respect that past. We're going to also have accommodations for affordable housing, significant amounts of public space that will have that will help tell stories, historical stories, but also look forward to the future. There's no youth plan for churches. Most of those churches, the ones that survived, have relocated, and you know, a lot has happened in 56 years. So we're really going to focus on one other thing, and that is, again, I think what the people, from what I read, what the people who lived in Brooklyn wanted is a united Charlotte, one where everybody lived and worked together and prospered together and enjoyed the benefits of this great community together. So we're going to create a community that is a part of what the new Charlotte is and what Charlotte is today, which is a community that is together. And so we look to see diversity of income, diversity of the types of businesses. We're going to be a big proponent of women-owned businesses as well. So we're going to create that kind of environment. And I think that kind of environment that we create will pay homage to what the dreams and aspirations of those who once lived in that neighborhood called Brooklyn. That answer? Thanks. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Couple here. Taking a recording with the mic.
Bradley Dilks. Been here since '95. Went to college here and moved away for a couple years to Memphis. And they had some urban renewal there that they suffered through, but luckily they didn't get the highway through a big portion of it. So knowing this history now, it kind of just amazes me, because I always wondered, moving there and then living in a 1920 house, and then moving back, I'm like, where are the houses that were from the 1920s? So it's a good understanding as to what happened here and why those types of houses and that type of housing is not here anymore. And then we only have the pocket parks of, you know, Myers Park, or you have Dilworth, or you have Plaza Midwood area. My question goes to kind of the housing side of it, where the new trend is micro-housing and smaller units. Is there any consideration of doing smaller, more affordable units, like under 200-300 square feet, for people who want to just be on their own but don't really need the full 600 square feet that most one bedrooms or studio apartments are. And, because we've seen studies in like Seattle's done it, and now they've kind of gotten all these codes in that now doesn't allow that stuff. So you lose the affordability of these houses, and now they're back up to $1,400 rents when they should have been like $900. So that's one thing. And then the whole thing of sustainability. Is there anything where it's going to be solar panels on anything, or any type of, water recycling, anything along those lines, that the development could be a sustainable development overall?
Yep. Okay, I think our design team should deal with sustainability. Quick response on affordability. Look, our company is by and large focused on New York City. I'm in New York City, Greg's in New York City, so it is the #1 least affordable housing market in the country. And there have been all kinds of efforts to make New York City more affordable by developing in what's called the outer boroughs outside of Manhattan. Everyone who thinks of New York City thinks of Manhattan, but there are 4 other boroughs. And so as those costs have driven up as well, so just to put it in perspective, the average price per square foot for a new construction apartment in New York City is $2,000 a square foot. And so that would mean a 1,000 square foot apartment would start at around $2 million. A affordable one in that space would be about $1,200 to $1,400 per square foot. So a 1,000 square foot apartment would be $1.2 million to $1.4 million. So New York City, actually, Mike Bloomberg, when he was mayor, created a new zoning classification that permitted and allowed micro units. And so there's one building that's recently been built on a larger scale by the Durst Corporation for micro units. So I'm a big believer. In fact, when we were working on a project in the Bay Area a decade ago, we were focused on affordability by size, as opposed to affordability by price, rent per square foot, or income areas. It's people pay rent in the absolute dollar amount, and just like you said, people don't need as much space. We can live with less space and be more practical, especially if they're in communities where there's a lot of outdoor areas and outdoor amenities. So that is something we're certainly going to look at in terms of affordability, not just in terms of how we're going to price certain units in an AMI grid, but also affordability for workforce housing, especially for younger people or empty nesters that aren't going to need that kind of space. And retirees, we're looking at doing a senior community, affordable senior housing in Washington, D.C. And we're going to do that by smaller units as well. And we're having to kind of educate them a little bit on, what the benefits are for that. And so we're certainly going to look at that. And then why don't we let Jeffrey talk a bit about sustainability, and he can amplify the other issue in terms of design, on affordability as well.
Thanks for bringing that up. It's an important aspect of what we're really all about. We're looking at some of the best examples from all over the country, all over the world actually, of incorporating sustainable design and development into the project. One of the great things about being in a global company, a global design firm, is that you can pull these examples out. And it's everything from the way that the property is designed to minimizing the materials that are used for construction, and all of those kinds of techniques. The other thing that we have is we have a couple special units in our company that are devoted to specific topics. One of them is around sustainability and design. We have another group that's working on resiliency that has to do with climate change. But one of the most interesting ones to me that's really applicable to this project, with 2,200 spaces, do I have that number right?
About 2,500.
2,500 spaces, is that we have a unit that is one of the leading national, working with the leading national groups on autonomous vehicles. So,
I think that means we have to leave.
somebody didn't pay the rent. So, for example, when you go to autonomous vehicles, you don't need 2,500 parking spaces. And all of these different design influences and kind of the cutting edge thought is really going to be folded into this. We have a wonderful opportunity. We're one of those great inflection points, I think, in design, where technology is going to fundamentally change some of the design elements. So we're very excited about this opportunity.
By the way, he mentioned parking spaces. We're going to definitely look to cut those down. Just to put it in perspective, New York has got, you actually have to get variances to build parking as opposed to, getting variance to eliminate them. So in markets, say like Charlotte, there's a calculation, where you are mandated because people are still in their cars. So give you an example today, why very few people in New York City have cars is that a parking space, a building we're doing downtown, we're getting ready to price our parking spaces, and it's an older very old building, but it was an office building, so it has some parking in it. So the space is going to sell between $500,000 and $1 million. So that keeps people out of their cars. So the idea is to look to try to do that, maybe in this, not the price of the parking, but to reduce that parking count so people can walk. The idea is that one of the incentives of being downtown is to be able to walk. And now with Zip cars and other forms of quick, car rentals, that further eliminates the need for parking. And so we think that will, give us an opportunity to be more sustainable because, of course, the number one pollutant that we deal with every day is, from our cars,
Yep.
So combustion engines are the ones that are the biggest, challenge for our environment. So we'll look to do that as well. Any other questions? I think she was in the blue has a question. She was next.
Hi, my name's Kristen. I have a question about the affordable housing. Is there any talk about giving priority access to the families who were displaced or their children, grandchildren, giving them maybe first choice, first right of refusal, I guess?
There hasn't been. The affordable housing has been discussed a lot, and I'm sure it'll continue to be discussed some. But I think for reasons I can't really explain, my immediate reaction to that is that I need to call my attorney. So I think I don't think the team would be averse to that notion at all, but I'd have some concerns over making sure that we weren't afoul of any equal housing stuff, right, which runs far and wide. But I like the idea, and I think it's a good idea. Whether or not we'd be able to execute on that, I think, is just a practical and perhaps a legal question. I'd ask Dennis if that gives you, and Don, anybody up here, if it gives you that idea gives you any pause trying to perhaps provide priority access if we can do it legally.
I think the fair housing laws would probably
Create
create a problem for doing that.
I have one more question, if that's okay. You talk about the 35% women minority businesses. How will people apply? Is there an application process? Who do we talk to? And when do we talk to them?
So we have been pushing on this particular issue pretty much from day one, and there's a number of ways that you can get to us. If you search Brooklyn Village on Google, you'll go directly to our website. We have a portal there that you can use to share the basic information on yourself and your company. I'm going to assume you're talking about a company of yours or maybe of a friend. And then we will pass that information to Mecklenburg County. The primary keeper for us, our key strategic partner on this effort, is Mecklenburg County's Inclusion Office, specifically a woman named Teresa McDowell. So really, at the end of the day, the thing that our team has to do more effectively, and sadly, it is not terribly difficult for us to set the bar in this regard. Communicate more often, communicate more deliberately, continue to educate folks on how you go about becoming MWSB certified. And Mecklenburg County helps drive that. There are a number of ways that you can do it. Mecklenburg County doesn't actually have a process themselves, but they accept CMS, NCDOT. Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools has an application. NCDOT has one. City of Charlotte has one. So they can help walk you through that. And then that information goes into a database. And as we begin to move through our development, and this has started not now, before now, we've been trying to track down legal talent, for instance, for the better part of 3 months. And we need engineers and architects today. I know that Jeffrey's firm has been very active trying to help solve the problem of advanced professional degrees held by minority and women-owned companies. You know, one of the challenges for us is at the end of the day, we don't complete the application, right? At the end of the day, it's not my company, it's, you know, your company or your company. And what we have done better and will continue to do better is just to pay attention, be deliberate in our effort to get to those numbers, and to help folks move through some hurdles that they are over some hurdles. Moving through the hurdles would not be the goal. Moving over the hurdles, so that where they might not have succeeded elsewhere, they'll succeed with our group being at the helm, just because we're paying attention and trying to get there with them. And do you have any thoughts on that, Don, that you want to add?
Yeah, I do. It's a little less complicated than that, by the way. Okay, so here, let me give you this straight, and we're doing this now. We do this around the country. You know, it is a cornerstone of what our company does in terms of, you know, we want to create a pathway of economic opportunity for minorities and women who have traditionally been locked out of those economic opportunities. So there is in order to know who we're doing business with, there is a certification process that the government, cities do it, counties do it as well. And so we're going to ultimately determine what and how many of the certifications that we're going to accept. The county has a certification process, but ultimately that's just to confirm that and validate that the business that we're doing business with is actually owned by a minority or a woman. Mainly that is because there's been a amount of abuse that has gone around the country where non-minority firms actually go and create shell firms that front as minority or women-owned firms, when in essence their beneficial ownership and there is by non-minorities and males. So the certification process filters and vets that process. So assuming that we deal with it, put that aside, then it's about opportunities. So we're going to procure over $700 million of goods and services and products. So that would mean that there is an opportunity essentially for almost every element of business. We are predisposed to trying to do business with qualified minority and women-owned firms. And so ultimately, we will have a orderly process of a bidding process to procure. That will hopefully work through a mechanism in partnership with the county where you as a vendor or any other vendor who wants to provide services will be able to log on to a site that we will operate that will let you know what the upcoming opportunities are and prepare and give you a head start on getting in a position to bid on those and respond to those. So similar to a procurement process that the government would do or any other organization, we will do that. And we will also have a consultant that specializes in helping minority firms and women-owned firms navigate that process. But our goal is ultimately the decision makers are here at the table right now. We'll be awarding these contracts. And a part of the criteria that we'll look for as an evaluation process is diversity of our providers of goods and services and contractors. That answer it for you? Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you guys for coming today. Really appreciate it. It was a great opportunity to come out and listen to your team talk to the community. Like you mentioned earlier about New York and the square footage, the price per square footage, Does your firm have a target range for price per square footage for the project right now?
So that's a difficult question for us because the project's going to be delivered over nearly 10 years. So it's hard for us to know what the market is going to do or not do, as we experienced recently, a lot of not do recently. So we'll respond to the marketplace where rental and for sale are concerned. We do have 107 units currently of affordable at 80% of AMI. So a single person household, one individual in a one bedroom does open at around $900 and proceed from there. But that's based on 2016's area median income. And of course those numbers move. Charlotte's enjoyed some positive trending there, so presumably rents would go up a little bit in response to AMI. But otherwise, we have to respond to the markets. I'm sorry to be dodgy on that one, but it's going to be a function of where we are at any given time in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think you want to add, Monty, why don't you add, one point is that we're going to provide housing for multiple sectors. So workforce housing for affordability, what would be considered upscale housing for working professionals earlier in their careers. Luxury housing, which will be there to service professionals and entrepreneurs and business owners who are well advanced in their careers, and then luxury housing for those who are empty nesters who are moving out of larger homes and bringing them into the city. And then the same thing for those empty nesters across those same housing tiers. So basically a broad section, what you would expect in a city and in a community, so a cross section. And then there will be some rentals and there will be some for sale apartments. Not everything's going to be condos, not everything's going to be rentals, so a mixture. So the idea is that we have a very diverse community that will have homeowners, renters, workforce, and across the board, just like the country is.
And will include single-family homes as well?
No, we're looking at maybe programming some townhouses or the like.
Okay.
We're not sure. This is, it's a high-density area, so we're going to be high-density.
Right.
And,
Okay.
and in fact, sustainability dictates actually greater density as opposed to utilizing, well-positioned land for fewer users. It's the idea is to, especially, for example, we go micro units, then our unit count's going to go up because what would be 2 units would become 1, or what would be 3 units would become 5. So,
Okay, makes sense. I have one other question.
Sure.
I did read online that how you were selected to be the builder for reasons that you bring a lot to the culture, and you really are embracing the community and those things. I'm curious what attracted. I'm sure your company has lots of options, so I'm curious. So what attracted you to Charlotte?
Me or our group?
The firm.
So our group, okay, well, he's already here.
Okay.
He's been here a long time, and Monty helped attract Jeffrey Simon, and then Jeffrey Simon and Monty attracted our company. I can tell you what intrigued me, and I'm sure Monty, who has a much longer history, can give you his perspective. What intrigued me was, as an African American born in 1960, remembering the civil rights movement, being raised by a single mother in a country that was transitioning, to be able to go back and my grandparents were from North Carolina, by the way, and so to be able to come back to North Carolina and help rebuild what was a predominantly or entirely African American, because of segregation, so it was an African American community, to be able to come and rebuild that in a way that sets a different tone in terms of economic inclusion was very intriguing to me. Add that to, as a business person, having 17 acres in uptown Charlotte was also intriguing, and getting to work with Monty was also appealing, and working with Stantec and Jeffrey was very appealing. initially, just with all candor, I initially turned it down at an investment committee. It wasn't until Jeffrey called me and got me to focus on it more and the details of it that, once I learned more about it, I was much more intrigued. And then I came here, met Monty. He introduced me to a number of people in the community, including the Second Ward High School Alumni Association and the like, and then I got, committed to it. So Monty, why don't you talk about your long history?
I am not African American, but I'll take a risk and just tell you that I'm an unrepentant liberal who has developed a lot of technically complex real estate over the years, and we get a real kick out of providing solutions, threading the eye of the needle where many folks say either that it can't be done or perhaps had another team been selected, maybe their approach would have been, a bit more practical in some way. We try and bring a little bit of passion to what it is that we're doing and to not only get the science of the thing right? Because we're neither Don or I, and I don't think Stantec, which is a publicly traded company, we're not running nonprofits. We're in a for-profit business, but so oftentimes folks see running a for-profit enterprise as somehow being irreconcilable with the idea of doing the right thing. And the second part of that, doing the right thing in Brooklyn, is just an incredibly complex problem and ties to my own ethic pretty neatly in ways that I could never understand the way a person of color would, but it doesn't change my desire to get there in a way that's as good as it can possibly be. Ideally, 10 years from now, Don and I are looking back, and the rest of the team, it's something that we're very proud of, and others are referring to it as an example of what's possible. That's what we're about always, is trying to be a demonstrator of what's possible on every site that we're involved with.
Do you want to add anything? One other thing. It is my goal that when this project's done, that there are additional women and African Americans who become multimillionaires as a result of the opportunity they get from this project, because that's transformative too. So we can be transformative, of course, without being a nonprofit. We can change the paradigm, and so that's the idea, is to use this project because of the scale of it. It creates some tremendous opportunities.
Thank you.
Have you identified retail tenants for the buildings and the hotels?
Well, we don't have any retail tenants. I think Monty laid out some of the hotel operators, but we're in the embryonic stages here. And so what will happen is, once we get through our community engagement, understand and incorporate what we've learned through this process, take the next steps with the county to move forward. And once we have the parameters of a development, then we will go out and look to retailers, but they will look like national, regional, and local businesses. Hopefully, many new businesses that are Charlotte-based, started by entrepreneurs who will hopefully be successful and become wealthy with getting their start on our project. But it'll be just like the diversity of the apartments. It'll be those types of diversity in terms of our retail users. And then the hotels we're looking at are going to be, as Monty laid out, the concept there. There'll be more select service, so they will not be big box hotels with large convention space and meeting space. It will be more intimate hotels. Any other questions?
Do you think that HB2 will impact this project in any way?
What was the question? Do we think that will?
HB2 will impact the project.
Well, look, do I think it will? I don't think so. I think that, it has had, some impact on Charlotte just because of some of the changes here. Look, I'm a believer that we as business people ought to do business and stay out of politics, and not even and let that work its way through. I'm surprised that businesses have actually made political decisions. Look, the NBA still has franchises in Chicago, and they're murdering young black men every day. And I think that's important too. So if they're going to have this moral compass, hopefully it'll lead them to do something in Chicago, do something in New York City, do something in Washington, D.C., where murders are up, I think, 35, 40%. So when you start regulating business with politics, it gets slippery. So I think ultimately, it shouldn't have any impact on our project. It doesn't have an impact on my desire to invest our company's money here. I think Charlotte is as special of a place as it was before. It'll continue to be a special place, and I don't think that one thing is going to change the business climate here. Any other?
We have another question.
You answered my question because I wanted to know if it would be a spot for seniors. I'm getting ready to retire, and I can see that front porch with the rocking chair and my little grandbaby running up to see it.
Well, great. We look forward to having it'll be a balcony though, and not a front porch. Okay.
Depending
But a
on
nice
how
view.
high.
Okay, right. A nice view.
I don't want the high balcony.
No other questions?
Can we expect to see you two running for office in 2020?
I can tell you only one of us is threatened to run for office, and it's not me, so, maybe.
My feelings are hurt.
Maybe she was talking about you two.
Yeah,
Right.
it could have been us too.
I think she was talking about Dennis.
I'm
Okay.
actually flattered I wasn't brought into that. Thank you.
I wanted to ask a question about the stories of the building, how tall will the building be? The tallest building.
We're not sure though, are we? Because I think we're looking at that now.
Yeah, today, I think the tallest thing we have rendered is 21 stories. But what you have before you, or what you've seen today, it's formative and not reflective of where we might ultimately end up. So, maybe they're taller, maybe they're shorter. We're just not sure yet. The things I think that the county's really focused on with us are more general. What's the park going to be like? What's the affordable housing like? What's the maximum amount you can build? What are you going to pay us? Stuff like that. And so the plan will likely change. The Brooklyn Village North site will have to be rezoned. So that will trigger a public process and welcome feedback during that process as well. You'll hear from us all over again on how the design might behave.
I do want to say, though, that we do have an interest in not seeing a bunch of 3, 4, 5-story stick-built sort of things like what you're seeing in South End and other areas right now. We were very intentional about not selecting folks who came forward with something like that, or to your point, folks who came forward with nothing but townhomes, because something like that smacks of exclusivity, not inclusiveness. And so very much wanting to make sure we maximize the opportunity for the current and future residents of this community in this development.
I have one more question, please. Sherry Clark. Do you all have a self-imposed general time frame for steps to make some decisions?
As quickly as we possibly can.
I'm a
Because
developer too, so.
As you know, the dollars go the wrong way in the beginning, and it's only when we finish do they start coming the right way, at least from my perspective. And so, Monty and I and Jeffrey, we're all incentivized to go as quickly as possible. Monty, I think, can walk you through the schedule of what we have planned right now, but based on kind of our hope.
Just generalized, I didn't make it specific.
Did that, so are you good, Jerry? Okay. Other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow night at the town hall.